Hello, and welcome to Smeg and the Femmes, a podcast to discuss Red Dwarf from a different perspective. I'm Jan Amelie, and today I'll be talking about Series 6, Episode 3, Gunmen of the Apocalypse. And I'll be exploring this episode with the help of my guest, Arcanemoody. So, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm glad to have a new guest. Um,
Yeah,
mhm. So, how did you get into Red Dwarf? Because obviously, it's a very sort of British show.
it is. Yeah. I was actually kind of raised in an Anglophile household. My dad was a very big fan of actually a lot of British spy television. So I grew up watching The Avengers, a little bit of Secret Agent, a little bit of The Prisoner, by Patrick McGowan. And then I also had my uncle who was a fan of Monty Python. So a lot of these comedy influences and, media influences, kind of coalesced around, a lot of my developing brain. And
Mhm.
we were also a Star Trek household, so sci-fi was very big. And then as an adult, I came to Red Dwarf. Uh, a little bit of background in America here in Red Dwarf would air on PBS, which is the public broadcasting station. And mostly similar to Doctor Who, you would kind of have to see it, either late at night or early in the morning. So sometimes, many, many years before I saw the show, I would hear about it because my friends would kind of roll into high school, which would be, you know, in Canada, I think you'd call it like grade 9 through 12. I'm not sure what the equivalent is in the UK. But, we're all like 17 to 18, and my friends would roll in and they had just watched it that morning and run very quickly to school, and tried to get a coffee somewhere in between.
That sounds like
Um,
much fun. It's
oh yeah,
yeah, it's interesting. Almost every American Red Dwarf fan I've talked to has said it was watching it on PBS that got them into it.
yeah. That's how they found it. I found it actually a few years later because I was dating someone who had bought the box set for her mom. She thought her mom was a very big Terry Pratchett fan. Her mom was a very big fan of Douglas Adams. And she thought, I think she hadn't seen it yet, and she wanted to see if her mom would enjoy it before she gave her the box set.
Mhm.
So I think it was like our third or fourth date, and we sat down, we watched, thinking we were going to watch one episode, and then we watched series 1 through 3 in one go, just 12 episodes. Like, oh my God, 18 episodes in one go.
It's very bingeable.
It's incredibly bingeable. And I was like, I have to have another date. I have to see what happens next in the show.
Well, that's a lovely way to get introduced to it.
Hmm.
Mhm. Okay, so we'd better dive into the episode, and of course, although this is very famously the Western episode, we
Yes.
do we do start with a completely different genre, which
Yes,
is
we do.
film noir, which I must admit I'm more familiar with than westerns. I mean, me and westerns. I mean, I could probably best describe myself as indifferent. I mean, I know they exist. I don't dislike them. And I
Yeah.
certainly enjoy this episode. But I'm probably more into film noir. So it's nice to get this little. I mean, obviously the reason it's there. Apart from the fact that apart from the fact that it's amusing, and fun, is to sort of set up, what happens later, and then we'll go into the Western hallucination, But I do love the sort of swoony jazz music and the black and white photography. It's all very nice.
Wonderfully atmospheric. And I think it's so funny to me that like that's Lister's program of choice
It does
for
seem odd, or doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah. It's like I know there's mentions of like, he's the Wimbledon game and there's mentions of like other AR games that he plays, but like the fact that we open on this one and it's so atmospheric and so involved and uh, It's just really interesting. And of course, we also get Lister and Sex in Public Places again.
Yes. It's very, it's yeah. I mean, I suppose you could. I mean, obviously the real answer is, his interests kind of reflect what Doug were watching on the TV growing up, But in universe, since we know from the book that he's very into the film "It's a Wonderful Life," which is also from the 40s, a completely different genre, but it does get pretty noirish at times, even that film.
Yeah.
So I suppose you could say maybe that's why he's into film. He likes film noir because he just likes old black and white films, which you could which would make sense, I guess.
Oh, yeah. It's also oddly enough, and I took a bunch of notes before I came on today, but it's a lot of it's kind of funny in the history of the BBC. One of the things that they did was they had basically a whole backlog of public domain films
Uh-huh.
in the event that a program had to be canceled, and a lot of them were, sort of like films, Hollywood films from the 30s and 40s. So there's obviously that's an influence on Rob and Doug, but that's also, in theory, we could certainly say it's like, to Lister as a teen or a
Yeah,
young,
yeah, of course, he did canonically, grow up on Earth in Liverpool. So it's not
right.
beyond the possibility that he could have. I mean, okay, he was, technically in the future, but I mean, we know that
Hmm.
that hasn't stopped, a lot of media from our time surviving surviving into the future, So yeah,
Oh,
it
yeah.
makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Well, and they've remade Casablanca, I think, a few times, by this period canonically. So,
I must admit, I'm like, I'm like, how can you remake Casablanca? I mean,
no.
like the characters, except obviously I'm thinking of the version with, Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, which I do love that. It does feel like a kind of film which would be difficult to remake, I guess. I mean, unless somebody already has. I mean, which I haven't. I must admit, I haven't actually checked whether anyone actually has in real life tried to remake Casablanca.
Yeah, I think it's one of those films that is I don't know that many people have like tried. I think there are other like film noir and even sort of pulp films from that period that have been remade, but I think Casablanca, uh, people tend to leave that alone
Yeah,
because it
I think
maybe
it's sensible.
public
Sensible,
outcry.
isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. I mean, they get so critically and publicly trashed before they even release the damn thing. It's probably not really the best idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, of course. You notice Lister's character is called Philip, which is obviously meant to be sort of Philip Marlowe, or a tribute
Oh
to Philip
yeah.
Marlowe, I suppose. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Also, obviously, it's all very sort of that kind of vibe, sort of the big sleepish kind of vibe, I suppose. With double crossing femme fatales and cynical private eyes, etc.
Yeah. Also love his little note to Crichton. He's like, "Why do I fall for people who are bad for me?" Even in a game.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of amusing, that he gets all philosophical inside a game.
When he's fighting to stay in a game and
Yeah.
not go back to work.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Craig takes absolute delight in doing a really graphic sort of mime of kissing and groping and so on. And of course, Crichton is all sort of obviously, I mean, I don't know if you could call him canonically asexual, but I mean, that is basically his function in the story. He's like, what is all this stupidity? He doesn't understand it at all.
Now you've been on this machine for a month. Why? And it's,
Yeah, it's just I mean, it's just
yeah.
two totally contrasting attitudes. But of course, once Crichton eventually manages to drag him out, we find out that Rimmer has sort of things to say on the topic as well.
The fact that Rimmer has watched Lister use the machine to have sex. And
Yeah, apparently he's been staying there watching him grind away. I mean,
mhm.
I mean, honestly, it's so revealing that I don't really even think I need to point it out. I mean, it's just is there something you want to tell us there, Rimsey?
Yeah, and he's done it. The fact that he's done it clearly multiple times because he mentions multiple games.
Yes, but Freddie, what do you grind away? It's just
You know,
I
you only play
mean,
Wimbledon because you're having it off with that jailbait ball girl.
yeah. Um, I, I mean, but I guess it kind of bothers some Americans because of differing ages of consent. I mean, obviously she's not real anyway. She's just a computer game
Mhm.
character. But I should probably point out, that the age of consent in the UK is 16. So
Yeah,
people here they would raise an eyebrow a bit, but they wouldn't be scandalised.
right.
I
It's
gather that in the US it's different.
it's different from state to state because we've got just by the nature of the country and the various colonies that popped up at various times. We've had I think we have 50 incorporated states now. We've got a couple of principalities that are technically not states, so they don't have voting power. It's oh, that would to go into it would be very, very lengthy. But
Yeah.
yeah, in very a good consensus is 16 to 17 in the majority. That's the majority of states. So
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can tell, from Rimmer and Lister's attitudes. One's accusing, one's slightly defensive. That they do consider it slightly dubious. But only
hmm
slightly, basically. I mean, they consider it, sort of titillating mostly. So I mean, yeah. I mean, I understand why to 30 years later, to some viewers it might look a bit dubious, but well, cultural context, I guess.
hmm Yeah, and Io presumably like Rimmer is coming from a culture that is maybe a little bit different. Like he seems to have implied that they're very um sort of to the right of prudish. So
Yeah. Although to be honest, I mean, Rimmer, there are other instances in canon, where Rimmer refers to finding teenagers attractive, so I mean, honestly, he can't really talk,
right.
I mean, obviously, the real reason he's having a go is, because oh come on, I'm just going to say it. He's jealous.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, the
Like
thing is, nothing's stopping him going into one of these games and having sex with some computer game character. So mm, you kind of wonder why he doesn't. But I mean, yeah.
yeah. I think it's, I don't know. Like again, like this could be like a whole other like episode, but Rimmer like does he get more out of cleaning his station on Starbug than he does out of in theory, having sex in the artificial reality machine. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people do read Rimmer as asexual. I mean, he does a couple of lines, which you could read that way. I mean, I mean, I kind of see him more as kind of well, listosexual. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think you could certainly make an argument for like demisexual or on the gradient somewhere or listersexual.
yeah,
Listersexual, I
yeah,
think
yeah. I mean,
is
you could certainly make an argument. I mean, the thing about
yeah.
Rimmer in particular, he's a character you can read in so many different ways, sexuality wise. I mean, honestly, really, the only reading I can't accept is, that he's completely heterosexual. I mean, I'm sorry, he just isn't.
No. No. It's like any expression of interest. I even Nirvana, I think, that's a very different sort of interaction. Anytime he expressed interest in I think you could make some, discussions around series 10, um, with I think, the when they're putting a new skin.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Edmonton, yeah, yeah.
yeah. But that's all very performative.
It is, and
Yeah.
actually also in Cassandra when he thinks he's going to have sex with Kochansky, because he thinks it's been preordained, so to speak. He's like,
Hmm.
oh right, well if it's preordained, then I'll go along with it, But I mean, it's not coming from him; it's coming from to oh okay, I'll go along with this then.
Hmm. And it's clearly like even in Cassandra, it's clearly just to annoy Lister.
Yes, yes, that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I suppose we should progress with the plot. So, I mean,
Yeah.
which is obviously that they're being pursued by rogue simulants, which quite unhelpfully explains that they were created for a war which never took place, and some escaped the dismantling program. And I've got to have a quick aside here. I mean, because the same thing occurred to me when I was doing the Sirens podcast. Which is what kind of idiots creates extremely dangerous homicidal robots and doesn't put in you know very very stringent safeguards in place regarding who they can actually hurt.
It sounds like a thing Americans would do, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you said it. I mean, I didn't. I mean,
It's, it's,
mind
it's
you,
like
maybe perhaps British people would too. I mean, I'm not exactly gonna uh, try and go defend my country. We're not really any better, to be honest, from some
yeah.
perspective.
I actually made a note. I'm like, I think this is the natural endpoint of the military-industrial complex.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I mean, the reason I was thinking of it was because in Sirens, one of the Sirens impersonates Crichton's creator, and we find out that she had the very good sense, to program in that he could not harm her in any way whatsoever, which is just common sense.
Right.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
someone read their Isaac Asimov. Good deal.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So of course, we were these they want to try and fool these simulants, and they come up with a ridiculous plan, which is funny in such a classic Red Dwarf way. It's utterly ridiculous. They basically putting Crichton's eyeballs on their chins and trying to pretend they're Vindaloovians.
It's really funny because this is in the same episode as the Dream Recorder and the artificial reality, AR games. You have these elaborate recreational tech and software, and none of it can be used as in a defensive capacity when when you have to fool someone on another ship. This is none of that can be accessed. You literally just have it's just physical prop.
Yeah, it's silly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that would actually be, yeah. Now you mention it, that would have been a very useful thing to to have. If they could sort of, I don't know, project. I don't know. I mean, there must be some horror game or something, which they could have projected, and pretended they were, I don't know, a ghoul or a zombie or something really unhumanoid.
Yeah. Something that would like, uh, just something. Like,
That
we
would,
can't put a skin.
modify the stimulants.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think
Yeah.
the only thing which would modify the stimulants is maybe gilfs because they're sufficiently unhumanoid.
Oh, yes.
Not that I think gilfs and suits exactly like each other, but I mean I think we do get an instance later in series 7 of them teaming up against their mutual enemy of humans.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I do love Robert's wonderful double take. When he puts his eyeballs back in and sees a simulant captain has come on board. It's just
Hmm. It's just a wonderful little bit of physical comedy. Like, squint, pretend your eyes aren't there, and then what do your eyes look like? And you pop them back in.
And then, of course, because this is Red Dwarf, never mind that there is a scary simulant on board. Crichton and Rimmer have still got time to argue about space core directives. It's funny. It's funny the way the way I think every episode in Series 6 has a space, at least one space core directive.
At least one Space Core directive, one cat version of We're Deader Than blank. Um,
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, I mean, the background to this is well, as you probably know from watching the extras. Rob and Doug were under a lot of pressure, to deliver Series 6 really early for a spring broadcast, and then in the end it ended up being held back until the autumn anyway, which obviously didn't impress them.
Right.
After having practically killed themselves, trying to get it out for the spring, I mean, obviously that was probably partly what precipitated the end of their partnership. I won't be surprised. That
Yeah.
and the failed US pilots. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is certainly it would give um it's I would certainly assume that's why at least, Rob Grant decided to take a break from working on television at that period. But yeah, this is the big one I remember from Series 6 is of course the finale, which I'm sure there's an episode in the
Yeah,
queue for
oh, we'll
that.
be, we'll
But
be, we'll be
yeah.
covering that shortly. Yes. Oh yeah, of course. Where it says, I mean, that script was they were literally writing it as the crew were recording it, and
Hmm.
projecting it onto the monitors.
Hmm.
And you can't really tell in the finished episode. They actually they got away with it.
Yeah. They did a good job. Well, but I think it helps that it's sci-fi, so it's like you're looking, of course they're looking at a screen, they're flying a ship.
Yeah, I mean
So,
that definitely helps because it means that people, I mean, and in this instance, I don't just mean Robert. It mean all of them, can look at their script if they have to. Yeah.
right.
I do think that the Simians, especially the Simian captain, they're good. Of course, they play it completely straight to straightforward villains. With absolutely no humour whatsoever, and it works because our crew, obviously, they're the funny ones.
Mhm. It's well done, and it's also I liked the implication, that they're like, "Ugh, you guys will be no sport at all." So it's the first thing they do is literally knock everybody out for 3 weeks and refit the ship and refit.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, we look at that and say, what a stupid thing to do. But I mean, it is a media trope. I mean, when there's a huge imbalance, but in power and weapons between two sides. I mean, if
Hmm.
you want there to be a story, then you have to give the weaker side a chance. So in this case, it has to be well, you won't be any fun unless we make things a bit harder for ourselves. So that's their excuse. For the simulates not just killing them straight away.
Yeah. What's the implication of like, oh, well, this isn't going to be any fun, so like, I don't, put the fox in a cage, you know, and feed it just enough that it doesn't starve, and then let it loose, and, and then you go on your hunt. It's very, and even they're probably rogue simulants in deep space, probably, just starved for entertainment.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, God knows when was the last time they met anything humanoid. So they want to make the most of it.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. It is kind of I mean, even though I know it doesn't actually hurt them. It's a nasty shot when he just points his gun at them and they all suddenly collapse. It's just like ooh, because you
Hmm.
don't you don't expect that kind of thing in Red Dwarf.
No, it's like, wait a minute, are they vaporized for half a second? It's what?
Just half a second, yeah, you're like,
Yeah,
what? No, I mean that can't happen because they're the protagonists. So they can't die.
yeah.
They've got
It's
they've
like
got
you.
got protagonist privilege, so to speak.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I know Rimmer is technically dead, but you know what I
Yes.
mean. He's not dead
The-
dead.
Well, even not dead, not quite dead. Well, and even Rimmer, even in the same episode, is arguing about the if this doesn't work, the one person who's going to take the one person escape pod. It's like Rimmer, you're a hologram. Someone could put you on a thumb drive and put you
Exactly.
in their
I mean,
pocket.
I mean, they could take his light beam with them. I mean,
Hmm.
it's kind of ridiculous that even at this stage he's still so cowardly. But I mean, I suppose they're setting it up for Rimmer World, where he obviously deserts them, and it rebounds on him rather spectacularly.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, of course, they're all kind of building up to Out of Time, where he kind of gets a redemption. There is a sort of character arc that you can notice. Sort of over sort of series 6 and then into early series 7 for Rimmer, because I think they're kind of building up slowly to make it even a bit plausible that he could go off and become Ace.
Yeah. Making it and making it plausible that even like I guess once we get to series 7 we can talk about, the Rimmer that was rebuilt from the nanobots. But the idea that like multiple Rimmers can make those snap decisions to do something other than run away. So,
Yeah, I mean, of course, in Series 7, Stoke Me a Clipper, they kind of changed the continuity regarding Ace.
yeah.
And it turns out they did that the Ace that they met in Dimension Jump wasn't the only Ace. It's a kind of a tradition of him being an intergalactic space hero, etc., etc. I mean, some people hate this retcon, but I mean, to be honest, it doesn't bother me that much because I mean, obviously they had to get Chris out of the show somehow because he wanted to leave. But as Doug says in the extras, he wanted Chris to come back. So obviously this was his way of doing it, by giving him a nice heroic send off and hoping he'd come back. And what do you know, it worked.
It did work. Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful sort of I think it's wonderful for people like us when we write fan fiction or we create fan works because there's an how many Rimmers have taken up the Ace mantle? Okay. So that is
Yeah, I mean,
some
from the
prime
point of
ground
view
for storytelling.
of us fanfic, it does make it more interesting, than just having the one version of Ace who was, I love that version of Ace in Dimension Jump, but it does make it more interesting having all these different versions because then you can write fanfic about, I don't know, Rimmer meeting all these different versions of himself and all these different versions of Lister. It just makes it more interesting.
Right. You could write, it's about Arlene taking up
Oh,
the
of
Ace
course,
mantle
yeah.
or
I
another
mean,
version of Arlene doing it. Yeah.
Arlene must have been Ace at some stage. I mean,
Yeah.
there's even a fanfic tragically unfinished because it was really 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 good where Kochansky becomes Ace, and it actually works. It was so good.
Yeah. Oh man.
But yeah, I mean, I like thinking of the female characters becoming Ace too, because I mean, why the hell shouldn't they really?
Why shouldn't they? Yeah. And that could be also another episode is like Doug Naylor and female characters.
Oh
But
yeah, I mean, I
yeah.
don't. I mean, I have mentioned this before on my podcast, but I mean, if, and this is obviously a very big if, Rob and Dirk ever stop suing each other and get to a stage where more Red Dwarf is possible, I mean, the next special episode is really staring them in the face. They need to go back to the parallel universe.
Mhm.
I mean, we could not only could we meet Deb and Eileen again, we could also meet Drew and Bexley. So I mean, it would just be nice.
Yeah, and it'd be nice to see like what happened in that universe, like, and how did it dovetail with events in the main universe. So,
And they could even bring Hattie Hayridge back. She could be Hilly.
oh my God, I would love that.
Oh
I
God,
miss
I mean,
Hattie.
I don't know if you've listened to the White Hole podcast, but on that I fangirled about Hattie at length, and said, please, please bring her back just for one episode. I mean,
Please bring her back.
if Normal could come back multiple times, you can give her one episode.
Yeah, one episode. Just,
Yeah, I mean, we're not asking her to become a regular again. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure Holly being a regular again would work, either Holly, but I mean, just give her one
yeah,
one episode. I mean, that wouldn't hurt.
right.
Yeah. Oh well. Anyway, back to gunmen. And of course, the simulants. Having been fluke hit by our crew, transmit the Armageddon virus. As they're dying. Uh, Hit, so to speak. Although, mind you, we find out later in Rimmerworld that the female simulant actually survived, but still.
Yeah.
They never explained that, mind you. I mean, why she was the only one to survive. But well, I guess simulates are tough.
They could have like a single person like escape pod similar to Starbug, um but
I,
yeah, they don't explain that, you're right.
yeah. Oh well. Oh well.
Yeah, well.
I quite like seeing her again. Because she gets more screen time in that episode than she does in this one.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
it's always the more female characters, the better. I mean, I know I'm
Yeah.
saying this about Red Dwarf, which is a famously mostly male show. And I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, when you choose to watch a show which is mostly male, there's a limit to how much you can complain about not having many female characters. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to complain a little bit sometimes.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just nice to see female characters, and yeah,
And
and
see them in strong roles. Yeah.
Yeah, they do that quite well actually. I mean, they have quite a lot
Yeah.
of female professors and Cassandra and so on. They are quite good at doing sort of one off female guest roles. It's but yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah. And I Yeah, and if I come in later on like some season 7 or some season 8, if we look at some stuff, I'm a fan of like the second Kachansky. I think she has some wonderful nerdy quirks that
Yeah, I do like. I like the original Kochansky too. But I mean, yes,
yeah.
I do like Chloe Annette's Kochansky. It's a shame because they really didn't do as much with her as they could have. I mean, with the sort of they could have played up, that she okay, she may be an attractive woman, but she's also nerdy as hell, But they didn't emphasize that
Mm.
enough, really. I don't think.
No, I don't think they did. And I think, I I am an, maybe it's an unpopular take, but I can defend aspects of season 8 or series 8, sorry, American. Series 8 because we see her interacting with Kat and Crichton because she's in like the Gen Pop cell, obviously with them. Whereas Lister and Rimmer are kind of siloed off over here. But we get to see her in the mix a bit more and as more just a member of the crew and less as someone Lister is pining for, someone who is out of place, someone, there's just some wonderful, interesting interactions that she gets to have, and she gets to be part of the shenanigans.
Yeah, I must admit, there is a lot about Series 8 that I don't like, but
Mhm.
it is nice, to that in Series 8 she's accepted as part of the gang instead of being the awkward newcomer that people either resent or want to have sex with, basically.
Yeah.
Of course, she does suffer from the kind of dumbing down which every character in Series 8 does, because every character is written as stupider than they actually are. But that's the
Mhm.
writing.
That's the writing, and that's yeah, I think, you know,
Of course, it
but
didn't
yeah.
help that in Series 7 and 8, Doug had various co-writers, which, I mean, obviously, it's still ultimately on him because he would have okayed all this stuff, But I think that did kind of dilute his writings to some extent, probably.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, not having Rob Grant there to um point to it to be the continuity person, I think um there was yeah, that was a weak spot.
Yeah, also plus obviously, not having someone who was kind of on equal footing with him because they were the co-creators, whereas these other writers were just hired writers. They weren't in the same position of power as Doug at by that stage, obviously. Yeah. So well, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to sound as
The
though I'm criticizing too much. Because I mean, Doug did, sort of pull himself together in the Dave era and give us a lot of a lot more good stuff, from sort of series 10 onwards. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I love Promised Land. I think
Oh,
Promised Land is
I love the Promised Land as well. Yeah, that was. I mean, if I really hope it doesn't turn out that was the last of Red Dwarf, but if it does, that was a lovely note to go out on at least.
right.
Mhm. Okay, so yeah, back to the episode.
Yes.
Yeah, I just I try not to go over an hour per episode because
Sure.
our streaming platform, only lets us have so much time. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, the Armageddon virus, and of course, Crichton immediately comes up with a very self-sacrificial plan. Which River says, go on, do it. But everyone else just ignores it. It's like Lister is thinking. Crichton, why are you bothering to say this? I'm not going to let you sacrifice yourself. He doesn't even bother to respond. It's kind of odd.
Yeah, I think it's an odd moment because he's asking for like permission to sacrifice himself, but then it's literally I think it's the fact that like it seems like he's gonna analyze a virus and come up with a way to fix it. So it seems maybe comparatively low stakes.
I suppose.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah. Sorry. I think I was getting muddled with an earlier episode where Crichton offers to him, sort of sacrifice himself in a more fatal fashion, and
yeah.
yeah, and Lister immediately says, "Crichton, sit down. I'm not doing my own smeggy ironing," which.
Yeah.
But I mean, even though he says it's because he doesn't want to do his own ironing, I mean, we know he wouldn't let him sacrifice himself.
Mm.
Because well, Lister likes Crichton, and he doesn't let fellow crew members sacrifice themselves.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, so they agree that Crichton will catch the virus, analyze it, and try to defeat it. But it becomes obvious, that he's struggling. He's losing the fight. So this is where we get to the western part. Um, the boys go into this western computer game, which is called Streets of Laredo. Which I gather is also a well-known song, which I wasn't actually aware of, but yeah.
Yeah, it's probably there's a lot of what we call country standards here in the States, but that was a very, very popular one for really the period that Rob and Doug would have been growing up. So it's like, I think the probably, Elton John has talked about the Jim Reeves version of that song being sort of like an audition track that he did a lot. So even it's even in Rocket Man we see Bernie and Elton singing Streets of Laredo. Um, and fun fact, it's actually derived from an Irish ballad, which I think it's called The Unfortunate Rake or The Unfortunate Lad. It's actually the original I think the original pages of it are actually in the Bodleian at Oxford. And here in the States, we also turned that song. It became Streets of Laredo, but it also became in the New Orleans blues region. It became a song called St. James Infirmary.
I see, yeah.
So
Of course, yeah.
yeah.
As you were saying that, I remembered, of course, in Queeg we get that "Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling" song, which I believe
Yes.
it's from High Noon. I have seen High
Hmm.
Noon. It was a long time ago, but I've seen that one. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, clearly Rob and Doug, had watched a lot of westerns, and Doug does actually say in the documentary, well, we wanted to do a western, so we asked the location scouts to find to look for locations, and of course they really struck lucky. They found out that in Kent, in England, there was actually this complete western town where people go and role play and being in a western at the weekends, which sounds like a lot of fun actually. Mhm.
It does. It kind of sounds like we have Ren Fair over here. I don't know if Ren Fair is a thing in the UK where it's basically uh it's LARPing around a village in I think what would be um like late Dark Ages, like pre-medieval time.
I
So
don't know if we would call it Ren Fair, but we certainly do have, kind of, fairs where people dress up as medieval people and so on. Yes. Hmm.
okay. Yeah, we have it and a lot of times in the States here there's the one in Missouri I think is like way out in the Ozark Mountains. So it's like you find fun little, you know, uh sort of incongruous locations for these things. So it's it is kind of amazing. It is kind of amazing that you would find something like that in Kent.
Yeah,
Just
it is, yes. But I mean, yeah, obviously, it came in extremely handy for them,
hmm
yeah, and yeah, I must say, I had a look at the stats on the screen when they pick their characters, and it's interesting, because Lister picks Brett Riverboat, who is perfectly balanced. All his let me see, he has 100 at 100 apiece, for charm, intelligence, and stamina. Whereas obviously for Cat, his charm is 250, stamina 40. Some reason, they gave the stats out of 300 for Cat and Lister, but only out of 200 for Rimmer. I mean, I guess that was just a mistake or something, kind of odd.
yeah, I think that would have to be a mistake. Like even, most role-playing games you would have, like a set standard even for, your side players.
Mhm.
So, I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. Well, I mean, I never noticed it before, so I thought I would mention it because it's just a bit odd. But I mean, I can definitely imagine it as a continuity error. But anyway, of course, they say, I mean, it's obvious, they say in the documentary, that the cast were getting to live out their schoolboy fantasies, and you really can
Mhm.
tell, can't you? I mean, they're all kind of rubbing their hands with glee. Let me at this,
Yeah. Oh, Chris Berry being like, I get to be Randolph Scott. I get to be the brawler. Okay.
Is that? I mean, dare I ask that American accent he does? Is that Ronald Reagan? Of
Yeah, it
course it
is.
was.
It
Yeah,
is.
of course he
But
did
that
Ronald Reagan.
was yeah, that's one of his better impressions
Of course he
and
did
Reagan
Ronald
was in a
Reagan.
lot of westerns back in when he was an actor. So,
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, and of course, obviously, for those who don't know, Chris did loads of voices for Spitting Image, of famous people. One of them was Ronald Reagan. I mean, he did loads of people. He did Prince Charles and various other celebrities, and yeah, yeah.
yeah. Well, even like I think in one of the I think it's either the series 1 or the series 2 documentary, we literally see him come out on stage as Rimmer, does the Rimmer salute, like I think as part of warming up the crowd, and then he goes right into his Reagan impression.
Yes, clearly it was one of those things that he enjoys, bringing out. Yeah, I mean, of course, actually, he even, I mean, I don't know if he actually recorded it specifically for that or if they just sampled it. But Frankie Goes to Hollywood, the 12-inch of Two Tribes even has a sample of him say talking as Ronald Reagan. So
My
yeah,
gosh. I didn't know that.
yeah. At least, no, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, if you look at his IMDb page, that, yeah, I mean, yeah, he's
Oh
been
my
on he's
gosh.
been on various sort of 80s records. He was also involved in some capacity in Genesis's Land of Confusion. I think he did a voice for that.
Wow. That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was a very busy person in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and of course as you've mentioned, Cat, absolutely, I mean Danny obviously said, the cat, if he's going to be a cowboy, he's got to be a Mexican, and
hmm
Danny is clearly loving it, and as again it says in the documentary, and as you pointed out, it's very strongly influenced by Sammy Davis Jr., who was also a singer and dancer like Danny and appeared in a lot of westerns.
Oh yeah. And specifically Western television. Like we saw the whole thing he does with like the Colt 45s, the spinning tricks. That was a trick Sammy did on many shows. So he did it on The Rifleman, he did it on like variety shows, and the Danny actually references his closing line that he would use on like variety, and the clip I showed you today actually,
Mhm.
he's doing the trick to the song Streets of Laredo.
Yes,
And then it
which is so funny. Yeah,
and
I mean, I didn't even know "Streets of Laredo" was a song. I thought it was just their
Mhm.
title they'd made up.
Yeah, no, but he actually at the end of the clip he's just like, I wouldn't put the gun belt on if I couldn't use these.
Of course,
So
Danny echoes, or
hmm
quotes, in the thing. Yes, of course, that makes complete sense. I mean, Danny is a sort of perfectionist professional, and I'm sure that Sammy was too, and
yeah.
it's just really fun, watching Danny to twirl those guns, and I love the little flamenco guitar sting, they do for him as
Yes.
well. Oh, by the way, I've really got to give Howard Goodall a shout out because his music is always wonderful, but he absolutely excelled himself for this episode.
He really did. And he got he if you listen to like, some of like that soundtrack, that's very um it's not necessarily like film western, it's westerns on television. So, which is really, kind of the format that they're playing with in, the 10 minutes they're in Laredo. So, it's all very Gunsmoke, Rifleman. I watched a lot of westerns as a kid. So,
Yeah. So yeah, of course. I mean, it's kind of funny that for Cat gets a Riviera Kid, which suits him brilliantly, and I think Brett Riverboat kind of suits Lister from to some extent, but obviously Dangerous Dan McGrew doesn't suit Rimmer at all.
no.
I guess
This is another
I guess he had to have a fun character, and nobody wants to play the kind of character that women would be in a western. So
no. It's, don't give Rimmer a weapon. Don't do that.
exactly right.
Um,
Yes, that
don't.
too. And of course, God, I always giggle, when River walks up to the bar and says, "Dry white wine and Perrier, please."
hmm That's a very if you ever saw the original Westworld, that's a scene where the um the actor who isn't James Brolin, oh, I can't think of his name, but he's the protagonist. He literally walks up to the bar in Westworld and, asks for like a vodka tonic with a twist of lemon, and, and literally the android turns to the James Brolin character and he's like, just give him whiskey. He's new in town.
Yeah. Oh, I also want to give a shout out to the actress Imogen Bain who plays Miss Lola because she has about two lines, but you could tell she was really determined to make an impression.
Yeah, she did a good job and she embodied that, um, character type very well.
Yeah, sort of bar older sort of bar owner, very very sort of tough and hard boiled, but still glamorous.
hmm
Yeah, and of course, she will. Obviously, the fact that she's the only woman in the hallucination who gets lines, probably makes her stand out more. But still,
Yeah.
then again, they're only in it for 10 minutes, and it's this is mostly about the boys having fun in their cowboy fantasy. So
Yeah. A lot of episodes of season 6 you really get to see sort of the day player actors, who regularly work for the BBC, and they're making every second count in these episodes. Like we can once we get onto Emo Hawk, we can talk about Stephen Wickham
oh yes,
as the
yes,
Guelph Bride.
I do
But
want to talk about
yeah.
Stephen, about
Oh
Stephen
yeah.
Wickham, yeah, because he also he manages well. I'll say it when we get to it, but he manages to make the most of acting for a mask and everything. So yeah.
Right. So everybody's just clearly having fun playing with these tropes. in that
Oh,
scene.
exactly. Having a lot of fun, and of course, Kat and Lister, they don't look exactly impressed by the whiskey, but they manage to drink it. But Rimmer instantly throws it up. He can't even be cool in his fantasy, can he?
No, his brain gets in his own way. And that's also canonically true.
Oh yeah,
So,
of course. In Better Than Life, especially, yes.
mhm.
Yeah, and the actor who plays Bear Strangler McGee is very sort of intimidating. Yeah, God, you wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of him.
No, line his lungs with lead.
Yeah, and of course, it did occur to me, obviously the fact that the entire saloon is really scornful of Crichton's sheriff character is kind of part of his fight, because I mean, obviously they kind of represent the virus fighting him, and they're kind of taunting him, make him feel hopeless. So I mean, I guess it's all kind of part of the virus trying to defeat Crichton.
Right.
I mean, we get more into this in the Backwards novel, but I must admit, I really have problems watching the reading the bit which the gunman portion of the Backwards novel because Rob really went way overboard with the gore.
Yes, he did. I'm a fan of that stuff, but like, yeah, it's oof.
It's just, yeah, I mean, it's just the fact that it happens to these comedy characters, and after a while I'm just like, hold on, it didn't happen like this in the book. I don't like this. But on TV, I mean, I don't like this. We do actually get another example of that in the next episode, but I best better I'll talk about that when we get to Emo
Sure.
Walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I do appreciate is even in the moment where Rimmer gets in his own way, he takes the shot, he gets sick, and then, Lister still has to dive in there and like save him from getting beaten up.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it's just, I mean, obviously the reason Rimmer's doing it is because he's like, well, you said yourself nothing could hurt us, but of course that's only true until they lose their special skills, which they're about to,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, but we even have like elements of that in like series 3 in Marooned when they're talking about being in the bar on Miranda and basically Rimmer um
Started a fight, yeah, and
started a fight that he didn't stay for, and Lister had to finish for him.
yes, exactly. Yeah, which is very in character. It does kind of beg the question of, why are they hanging out together on leave? When they're supposed to have hated each other prior to the accident. But I don't know. Maybe they just bumped into each other, or maybe Rim was following this around.
Mhm. I imagine there's probably some days where it's just like Peterson's hungover. You want to hang out?
Well, that would make sense, I guess. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I do love the special skills which they all get a chance to use. I mean, of course, Lister throws knives around Jimmy, which is a very neat sequence. and then
Yes.
and then Cat shoots bullets out of the air. Wow.
It's so fun. And I know Craig had like feelings about like I wanted to be the gunslinger. Who wants to be a knife man? But there's some wonderful, again, there's also some, really wonderful context in Western media. So if you have James Coburn in The Magnificent Seven, you've got James Caan in El Dorado. The clip of James Caan in El Dorado, I definitely recommend, for our listeners.
Yeah.
Check the clip on YouTube. It's the choreography of that scene very clearly inspired at least part of Brett Riverboat's knife skills, and
Mhm.
it's well worth watching.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is all a lot of fun. I mean, I'd probably enjoy it more if westerns had been kind of fantasy for me as a kid, which they weren't really, But
Hmm.
that doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. I mean, it's it, it, it
Sure.
I mean, You can't not enjoy it really, because I mean the cast and the characters are so clearly enjoying the heck out of it. You can't not enjoy
Hmm.
it. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, of course, that wonderful moment where Crichton is trying to leave town and Kat's bullet ricochets off about 5 different things, and then it makes the town sign fall on Crichton. It's a round of applause from the audience, and it really is good.
Mhm. Also appreciate like once they're trying to make Crichton remember who he is, and he remembers. I think he remembers like Lister's breath and the
and
smell of his dirty laundry.
and also that remembers a Smeehy.
Yeah, and then remembers a Smee. He.
I was never quite sure why the audience went so, ugh, I can't eat any more raw coffee. I mean, I can think of much worse things to eat than raw coffee, but still.
Yeah, raw coffee. I think it's your mouth would dry up, but he's a robot. He doesn't have, he's an android. He doesn't have salivary glands. He's fine.
Yeah, yeah, he'll be okay. I do love
Huh.
the little meta line they put in where he says, "If that's got to make sense, I don't want to be sober, about their actual situation."
Mhm.
That's such a meta comment on uh the whole setup of the show. The fact that they're marooned in outer space. 3 million years from civilization, etc.
Mhm.
So of course, then we get the showdown with the Apocalypse Boys, the leader of whom is obviously the simulant captain, or I mean, presumably that's in Crichton's imagination, because actually he's dead. But it makes sense that he would show up as a face in the hallucination or the video game, or whatever you want to call it. And of course he
Right.
yeah, and of course he cheats by disabling their special skills.
So rude.
So
So
rude.
rude, man.
How dare you not play by the rules?
Yes. I thought the whole point was you wanted a worthy challenge. But
Exactly. Yes.
again it's the virus,
Yeah,
so
really, the virus, of course, making a desperate last attempt to protect itself, but still, yes.
hmm.
And then, of course, we get this funny bit, where Rimmer thinks he still has his special skills, and then finds out just too late that actually no, he doesn't still have them.
He doesn't still have them and he can't clock out. He can't like he's like my glove's not working. No, no, no.
He does this weird little dance.
Mhm.
And then I mean it's all very funny. Yeah, I like the fact that they end it here. I mean, of course, in the backwards book it does not end here. It goes on and on and gets worse and worse. I think the way they end it
Oh
here
yeah.
is the best way to do it. Well, definitely on TV anyway.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. I guess I'm just soft-hearted. I don't want horrible things to happen to our cast.
No.
Yeah. Anyway,
It's better in book form, I think. It's the backwards book is very Rob, I think.
yeah. I do
It's-
like I do like all the books. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah.
backwards has parts, which I have problems kind of rereading sometimes because yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Anyway, they still manage to buy quite enough time, and his guns quite get it. I mean, I guess it's all kind of metaphorical because it's in his mind. His guns don't have bullets, and they have doves on them, and they turn into doves, and it destroys the virus. I mean, I guess it makes sense, because Crichton is a very peaceful character.
Yeah. Well, and he like literally talks about it being, I think that's like the name of the program.
The dove program, yeah, of
The
course, yeah.
anti,
Hmm.
yeah, the Dove program. Um, and I'm not sure, like I think that is definitely a motif that's a little bit more unique to Crichton rather than even like the Western motif. Like, you don't necessarily, it's like periodically you would see doves in like imagery, but it's not something that is referred to
Hmm.
quite so often. But
I mean, I guess you can
sorry.
explain it by saying, well, it's just all in Crichton's subconscious, so it doesn't need to make
Yeah.
too much sense. Although, oh, I
Yeah.
do want to mention, they did say in the documentary the shape of the simulants um ship was supposed to echo those cow skulls that apparently are a feature that in westerns, or at least according to the
Oh
at least
man.
according to the props person.
I love that. See, I do love that. There's, um, that's a wonderful. It's just like such a wonderful homage to like Western tropes and motifs. So that's a really lovely sentiment. I like that.
It is, yes, and it's a nice little touch. And then, of course, well, they manage to get out of the game, and they have to madly dash to the cockpit so they don't collide with a fiery moon, and they
Yeah.
just well, there's this moment of tension where you think it's too late and they've actually died, but then they come out, they emerge, and you get this lovely yeehaw moment. I love that moment. It's such a
It's a great moment, and the fact that that's done with all practical effects is wonderful, except for the flight into the sunset, obviously. But um,
yeah.
that's just a wonderful. And I do love the arts directors and the prop people talking about. They're like, oh, that's the same. That's this. It's like this binding agent that ends. They're like, oh yeah, that's in pot noodles.
Yeah,
The stuff they used to make the lava is in pot
yeah.
noodles.
I mean, it looks so good, and they made it out of something so utterly mundane. It's so funny.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, they do it all the time, in the
They're
show.
so clever.
But
It's just
I
brilliant.
do love
Yeah.
the sort of special credits. With the Western music and over the sunset and everything. It's all
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, you can see why this is the episode of Red Dwarf which won an international Emmy, because it's very much a prestige episode.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's I think British comedy a lot of times, sort of there's this implication of, maybe some things being kind of slightly inaccessible because of different cultural sort of tropes, but like the idea of like the Western being something that appeals across the board is very fun,
Yeah,
yeah. So,
obviously it probably helped, that westerns are a very American thing. I mean, obviously, so I mean that probably
yeah.
helped. It probably appealed to whoever judges these things. But I mean, yeah, it's. I mean, yeah,
Yep.
I'm so glad it got it.
Yeah, I'm glad this was the one. I'm glad Robert was the one who got to go. I'm glad Robert was up till 3 in the morning partying and forgot to call Doug.
Yes, that was so funny. I mean, you can tell Doug is still holding a grudge.
Doug is still so mad. He's still like so.
Oh,
Maybe it doesn't help that this is clearly the same interview where he talked about the failed US pilot
it probably
for
was,
Red
wasn't it?
Dwarf.
Yes. Oh dear.
But like clearly some things are he's feeling very stung by a lot of things.
Yes. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Obviously, that the US thing didn't end well. I mean, the only thing which kind of did end well was winning this Emmy. So I guess so. Yeah. Mhm. But
Yep.
before I wrap up, one thing I do at the end of the every episode is I get my guests to rate it out of 10 for both overall for quality and also how slashy would you rate it?
Yeah. So overall quality, I would say this is definitely up there. So out of 10, I would say um probably a 9.5. Can't really say what I would take points off for, but like it doesn't it's not quite the perfection of Back to Reality, where there's this perfect merge of sci-fi hijinks and mix of like
But
genres.
yes, I
Um,
love that
but
episode. Yeah.
it's still excellent. Slashiness, I think it has to at least be a 7 because Lister calls Rimmer Rimsey at one point.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's we get the return of Listy and Rimsey and just in casual usage, like not mocking, just casual usage. And then also Lister having sex in the AR machine, Rimmer being at least aware of it,
Yes.
uh and a lot of sort of um engaging on that front. So yeah, I would say yeah, about 7 out of 10
Oh, that's interesting. 'Cause I mean,
for
yeah,
slashiness.
for slashiness, so I've actually given it the same score, 7 out of 10. I mean, it's not sort of off the scale like Demons and Angels, but there's definitely a lot there.
Oh,
I have already.
It's not quite, it doesn't quite, it's not quite as heartfelt as something like Marooned or Thanks for the Memory or Promised Land, but it's got some wonderful, funny elements that are also semi-domestic and also just very unique to those characters.
Oh yes, definitely. And I think overall out of 10, I'll give it 8 out of 10. You know, because I mean it's a very good episode. I mean, I always enjoy it. You know, it's just the other episodes I find more compelling, like like Back to Reality, Thanks for the Memory, and so on. You know, so I mean I can't give them all 10 out of 10. So I mean, you know. And that wraps up this episode of Smeg and the Femmes. Thank you to Horgomet for technical help, and also thank you to my guest, Arcanemoody.
Thank you.
Okay, if you'd like to give us feedback, listeners, you can do so on Tumblr or Discord on the posts where I'll be linking to this episode. You can also email us at smegandthefemmes@gmail.com. And my customary announcement that if you want to look for earlier episodes of the podcast, we now have them archived. So just look for Smeg and the Femmes on YouTube for earlier episodes of the podcast. And the next episode we'll be covering is the first instance of the show doing a sequel to a previous episode, and it is, of course, Emo Hawk Polymorph 2. I hope you'll join us then, but for now, goodbye.